It's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Chetan Goudar. He's Vice President of Process Development at Amgen, and he leads the Attribute Sciences function. All right, his team is the one that's generating an understanding across molecules in Amgen's diverse pipeline and develops methods to test and control those attributes, enabling progression of molecules from research and development through the regulatory approval of ultimately to the patients. And patience is the number one thing for Dr. Goudar, as I've learned just recently. Before he was at Amgen, he was at Bayer, and he has the accolades of the ACS, BIOT, and Biochemical Engineering Journal Youth Investigator Award. So I want to welcome him, and he wants to make sure this is as interactive as possible. So he said, if you have questions, you can either place them in the chat or feel free to speak out. So welcome, Dr. Goudar.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I mean, I'm thrilled to be here, and I've been looking forward to this day actually for quite some time now. So thank you very much. Welcome, students. Good morning, good afternoon, depending upon where you are. And just before we started the call, I was telling Michelle and Kathy, I'm so glad I'm not competing with any of you. I've had a chance to review what you've accomplished, and it's very, very impressive. So congratulations, and I'm absolutely sure you'll do wonderful things as your career and life unfold. So what I'll do today is maybe talk to you about three broad things. The first, I'll kind of walk you through my career journey, and through that, maybe I'll share with you a few lessons I've learned along the way. The second, I'll talk a little bit about what do we do in a biotech industry, especially in the context of making medicines for patients, and how does biology fit into this very important activity of developing medicines for serious illnesses. And thirdly, I will maybe share some perspectives with you on what success means to me, and perhaps maybe share some thoughts that you may want to take with you as you contemplate on how you want to progress in your life and careers. So let me start with where I am today. And I work for Amgen, like Kathy said. And Amgen, has been around for 41 years now. We are the world's largest independent biotechnology company. But despite having 20,000+ people and so forth, I still love that we have a very warm and welcoming culture. It's a very science-based company. Science drives everything. Biology, of course, is a very, very, very big part of what we do. And I happen to work in process development, and I'll come back to my job in a bit, but that's kind of where I am today. But how did all of this start? And when I was in high school many, many years ago, I liked maybe chemistry, physics, and mathematics the most. Biology I liked as well, but there was a clear passion that I had in high school, maybe for chemistry and mathematics, if you will. So that drove me to an engineering career, or at least an engineering education, if you will. And within that, I chose chemical engineering because I felt that would probably give me the most exposure to chemistry and mathematics. So with that, I pursued an undergraduate degree in chemical engineering. I grew up in India, and I went to school there. And the first year or two, I did my coursework. It was terrific. I was enjoying it. But there was a pivotal moment in my life, in my summer of my sophomore year, where I had to do a summer internship. It was, a part of the requirements of my degree. And I happened to go and work, spend 3 months in a lab that was using microorganisms, right, bacteria, to actually degrade toxic pollutants. So what they used to do was they used to go to a gas station and get soil samples. Most of these gas stations actually leak. And you have these, components of gasoline, things like benzene, toluene, xylene, and so forth, carcinogenic molecules that leach out into the soil. And bacteria, actually develop the ability to degrade these toxic contaminants into CO2 and water. So this group used to go and collect soil samples and then try and isolate microorganisms that could actually degrade benzene and things of that sort. So I found that fascinating because you would start off with this very simple shake flask. Day 0, you would have, let's say, I don't know, 1 milligram per liter of benzene. You inoculate with microorganisms and you watch over time the concentration of benzene go down, the cells grow, and then the end product was CO2 and water. So that, I think, I have to say, was maybe the most pivotal moment in my career. And there were 2 things about that experience that really have been with me since. One is the fascination with a living system, how these cells would grow, divide, multiply, but then along with that, convert toxic starting material. In this case, it could be like a benzene into relatively innocuous CO2 and water. Fascination with biology, if you will, but also equally important to me was what is the end result of that biotransformation. In this case, it was converting a toxic chemical into relatively harmless end products. So with that, it became very clear to me that I wanted to pursue graduate school in this area of biotransformation, if you will. So then I came to graduate school, and then my master's degree was in environmental engineering, where I kind of pursued that same kind of work, working with cells, living systems, transformations. And in the process, right, you have to develop an understanding of what's happening inside the cell, what's the metabolic pathway, what are the catalysts, the enzymes, what conditions are most favorable. So you then start to study those aspects in detail because you want to optimize these kinds of conversions. So that was kind of my master's program. And then I was fortunate enough to be exposed to the other side of biotransformation, which was, again, working with living systems, in this case, mammalian cells, but not to degrade something, but to actually create something, which is, in this case, protein-based medicines for serious illnesses like, hemophilia, heart disease, cancer, things of that sort. So I started to work at Bayer Healthcare in Berkeley in 1999. That was my first job. And as I was working, I worked for a couple of years, and then I did my PhD while I was working full time. So that's a little bit of a atypical path, because after my master's degree, I had a choice of going to a PhD program or working. I just was very fascinated with the work that was happening in Berkeley at Bayer. I started to work there, and then I also did my PhD while I was working at Bayer. But the point I'm trying to make is at Bayer, right, what I learned was, again, living systems, if you reprogram them, recombinant DNA has become so commonplace now that you can actually get them to express, very sophisticated proteins that actually, can treat serious illnesses. So I spent my first 10 or 13 years there working on using mammalian cells to bring about transformations that resulted in the production of proteins that were therapeutics. And some of the work that Kathy has shared with all of you comes from that time and later, where what you will see is there is a very strong biology component, right? Even though I studied chemical engineering, when you work with the living system, the heart of that, the machine really is the living cell. So some of the work that Kathy shared with you gives you some insight into the kind of research that goes into this effort. And then 2011, I came to Amgen. I've been there for 9 years now, and I'm doing similar work, but the disease areas are broader and different. So we have, for example, a lot of work in oncology, cancer, a lot of work in heart disease, a lot of work in neuroscience as well that we have been working. So in pursuing this, right, there is maybe a couple of things that I'll share with you, so that you kind of get a sense for where you can go with your interest in biology and other disciplines. What's very clear, right, is if the 20th century was a century of chemistry and physics, many of us believe the 21st century is the century of biology. The understanding that we have has increased exponentially. It's going to increase exponentially. There is no doubt about that. In my early days, if I had to sequence the cells I work with, it probably would cost me $100 million. So we won't even think of it. But today, for about $300-400, I can take a sample from a bioreactor, get it fully sequenced, and understand what's happening in the transcriptome of that mammalian cell. And some of the examples of that you have seen in the publications that Kathy sent out. So that advance, right, not just in biology, but in computing and in AI, will only exponentially increase our learning, understanding, and hopefully solutions in the biology context. And I think many of you, or almost all of you, right, are very uniquely positioned to be in this space where you can truly make a difference. So what will it take, I think, to be the most impactful? And I'm going to come back to the question, maybe with my perspective, is first thing is it will require multidisciplinary thinking. The problems that that I try and solve, my team tries and solves today, they are complex problems, and you just can't go at them from one dimension. You have to have maybe not expertise, but enough understanding across disciplines. You have to be able to fluidly communicate with somebody who could be an engineer, a physicist, or a cancer biologist, or somebody else, because all of you will have to come together to solve these most complex problems. The second thing is, I was thrilled to see that many of you have a very strong connection to mathematics as well. And I truly think the intersection of computing, mathematics, biology is where the best magic is going to happen. So please keep that connectivity that you have to other disciplines as well, because I truly think that's where you will be able to make some very unique contributions. The third thing, which I find very important, is how well can you work with others? I think it's relatively easy to do your best work by yourself, because you can control your style, the way you work, how you work. And every one of us is different, so it's easy to kind of manage yourselves. But when you're part of a larger effort, which I think many of you will be in your careers, a very important attribute to have is how well can you be a team player? How well can you be a leader? Because you will need people to follow you, to see your vision, participate, engage. So that's a skill or an attribute which I didn't receive any formal training in. I of course was taught engineering, I was taught biology, I was taught mathematics, but I didn't really take a class which told me how to be an effective team player, how to be a leader. But I think certainly in an industrial setting, it is very important to be able to do all of that, because then you bring out the best in people. And when that happens, you end up having the best outcomes. So kind of keep those attributes in mind as you think about your career, and as you think about what do you want to do and how best you can be. Now, having said that, if you look at how the therapeutic space is evolving, aspirin was the first medicine that was brought about more than a century ago, and it was a chemistry-derived medicine, and we still have some very impactful chemistry-derived medicines. That's not going to go away. That will always stay. But even in those conditions, right, one has to understand the biology of the disease. So even before you think of making a therapeutic, which is what folks like myself do, there has to be an understanding of the biology of the disease. So that's the most fundamental thing. And then you can use chemistry to make a medicine. And the part that I'm involved in more so is how can we use biology to make a recombinant protein or a cell therapy or a gene therapy kind of a product. So again, in that context, right, biology is there every step of the way, but it is applied in very different ways. I mean, our research colleagues look at more fundamental research. The kind of work that me and my teams do is more translational research. But the underlying thing is good, sound understanding of biology, coupled with some chemistry, physics, engineering, mathematics, I think is the way we go about doing it. And what you will see is if you just pay attention to the FDA approvals of new medicines and so forth, the contributions from biotech and biology are just increasing. So I think maybe hopefully this gives you a little bit of a sense of what happens in the biotech industry and what happens when we want to make protein-based medicines. And I'm happy to take more questions from you, as time goes on.
There's actually a question in the chat there. Can you
Sure.
see it? Or in the industry leaders such as Amgen, does the company do its own basic scientific research or the company research published by academia?
Yeah, great question, right? So the answer is we do both. I would say maybe 80% of our early stage or new molecules that we advance through come through our internal research. But look, I mean, there is exceptional work happening everywhere, right? There is a lot that we learn from academic research. So let's say if somebody publishes something about a new target or a new gene or something in cancer, right? I mean, we read it, we look at it, and then we may say, hey, you know what? That's not a space that I want to participate in for whatever reason, or hey, that's very exciting for me, and we'll build on that. So while every company like ours has an active research team, everybody looks and sees what's happening across the board, and that you may think of as a normal way of doing work. But even more so, we also sometimes, but many times, have very active research collaborations with an academic lab, with a small company. So there is a very healthy bit of innovation that comes from the outside in to Amgen. Okay. And then maybe the last point I'll make, right? And Kathy, feel free to jump in anytime when there are questions, okay? No problem. The last point I want to make before I will open it up fully for questions is what do we think of as success, right? And success means different things to different people. It's a very personal thing. And for me, having been doing this for about 22 years now, working earlier on, of course, I had some personal goals. I wanted to get X, Y, and Z done, and so on and so forth, right? But it's become very, very, very clear to me that success is not so much so about what one accomplishes personally, but at least my view is success is what do you do for others. To me, I think it's a very, very important thing that everyone should think about. But my personal view is at the end of all of it, right? I feel of the 7.5 billion people in the world, those of us on the call today have had the opportunity, I think, to have a good education and a number of other things. And we've had people in our lives who have been supportive, helpful, encouraging, parents, friends, family, teachers, all of that, right? So with all of that, I think we have been equipped with the tools that help us create things, build things, do things that can really have an impact on society. So I urge all of you to, you have long ways to go, and you'll be very successful. You're very accomplished already. I don't doubt for a minute, you'll be very accomplished too. But if you can maybe just plant the seed and say, hey, as I go through all of this, what can I do for society? How can I maximize my impact? I think if you can carry that with you, I think you'll do wonderful things, and you really will be very, very pleased with the impact you'll have. So what I'm going to do is I'll just share my screen and talk to you or walk you through a couple letters that we have got from patients. So that gives you a sense for why folks like myself wake up and want to go to work every morning. Let me share my screen here. Can everybody see it? Yeah. Okay. So let me start with the left one. I'm going to read it to you. Okay. It says, "Dear creators of Aimovig." So Aimovig is a migraine medicine that we launched a few years back. See, migraine is a very debilitating disease. The unfortunate thing is migraine patients, right, they look normal. So when you see them, you don't realize they're suffering. And until about a few years back, there was no real treatment on mechanism for migraine. Other medicines were repurposed, but there was no medicine really for migraine. So Aimovig was the first on mechanism based medicine that was launched for migraine. Thank you. I've spent 2 years in bed. Almost every second a scale 6 or higher migraine. I moved in with my parents. I thought I'd never work again. It's been about a month since my first dose of Aimovig. I just applied to 2 real career jobs. I feel human, and I think I can go get a life now. I honestly cannot thank you enough. I can do more than just survive thanks to you. Watch out, world. Thank you for your hard work. You saved me. Okay, so that is from a migraine patient. On the right-hand side is for our oncology medicine called Blincyto. And this comes to us from the parents of a child who had ALL. Okay, our 14-year-old son Freddie has ALL that recently relapsed and refracted. He was first diagnosed in February 2013 and relapsed on 9 December 2014. You cannot imagine how we as parents felt throughout this. When he was first diagnosed, you feel like your whole world has imploded, to the hope when he was first put into remission, only to have the same implosion again when it relapsed while still on maintenance, and worse to see the chemo was not working. Okay. The reason for all this preamble is to explain where we found ourselves when our consultant, Becky James, explained about a recent trial of your drug that had completed in Sheffield, just south of here. Early days, okay, of Blincyto. Freddie has approached his whole disease and treatment with the view that he's not a statistic and wasn't interested in the odds. That you were able to grant use of the drug on compassionate grounds post the trial has given him another chance. The reason for writing was to thank you and the countless people who have been involved in getting drugs like panitumumab from concept to trial to general usage. I don't know how often you get to hear about the end result except in a list of stats of patients. In Freddie's case, your drug has worked, with the bone marrow leukemia going from near 100% to near negative in 2 weeks. He can now have a bone marrow transplant. So clearly we have more hurdles to jump. I know it's going to be long and hard, but we would not have the option without the years of work that Amgen and your scientists have invested. There is nothing we can say that really does justice to how grateful we are, right? So I think this is why I come to work every morning. And again, it's not just me, right? There's 20,000 people at Amgen and across the entire industry. So it's not just one company. This is what motivates us, right? We are all engineers and scientists, just like many of you will become. But at the end of the day, it is knowing that, you know, the small contribution that you make really has an impact on people's lives. You know, a couple examples are here in front of you. There are millions of such examples. So that's what you know motivates us, excites us, and my sincere ask of you is you are extremely talented, extremely hardworking. You'll be extremely successful in life. But just imagine, right? If you can channel that energy into making a difference for society in people's lives, it is truly a win-win proposition. So I want to end on that note, and we'll take any questions that any of you have.
So if you have questions, oh, here we go. Oops, I thought I saw a question in there. Alex Tang.
Do you want me to read my question out loud?
Sure, that would be great.
Okay. Thank you for giving this talk today. I really appreciate it. So I saw lately in the news that Amgen's KRAS inhibitor is having a bit of success in clinical trials. So could you talk a little bit about the current R&D stage and how that's going right now?
Yeah, so that's a great question, right? So KRAS was called the undruggable target. For 30 years, people had tried to, go after KRAS and were not successful. About 3 or 4 years back, I think, Amgen medicinal chemists, right, my research colleagues were able to come up with a molecule that they found this pocket on the molecule surface they could target, and we made a medicine for that. It is called sotorasib. It is in review, both in the FDA and in Europe. We have submitted our marketing application for that. We have finished clinical studies. We have seen terrific efficacy in the clinic. The medicine has a very good safety profile. So based on that combination of information that we normally have to, generate, we have compiled all of that into a marketing application, and it's currently under review by the regulatory authorities. So, we hope to get approval pretty soon, and it will truly be a game-changing medicine for patients, who have that G12C mutation. So, again, we are both humbled and excited, right, by the prospect that we were able to advance a very critical medicine very quickly to patients who really don't have other impactful choices, and are eagerly waiting to hear from the agencies and seeing it get approved so that a broad set of patients can benefit from its efficacy.
There's another question. What are your thoughts on the key distinctions between industry and academia?
Yeah, both my parents are professors, right, or were professors, and I always wanted to be a professor. I mean, so I think I'm a good person, I think, to maybe ask the question too. There are some very meaningful differences, but there are more similarities than one would normally think, especially if you're envisioning a career in research. So first of all, what I would say is, if research is your passion, I would argue that you could do exceptional research both in academia as well as industry. So please don't have the notion that if I go to industry, I will not be able to do the best research. Absolutely not the case. And perhaps some companies are more amenable than others, but by and large, right, our industry is very, very active. I mean, we publish extensively, we go to conferences, we chair conferences, we're on the editorial board of journals and all that, right? So I think research, you can do well both places. The one difference though is, I think in academia, you can probably do more, basic research. You can explore more. You may have, maybe more degrees of freedom, simply because the expectation is that you kind of take on problems that very little is known about. Whereas in a very general sense, industry research is a little bit more focused, right? For example, if we have an interest in cardiometabolic disease, we'll of course invest in research in cardiometabolic disease. But if company X is an oncology company only, then they'll say, hey, most or all of our research will be in oncology, right? So there'll be some constraints that you will experience just because that's the nature of how an industry works. But that having said, within that area, you can do the best possible work. So I think to me, that is no longer a big differentiation point. But if you love teaching, and if you enjoy being with students and things of that sort, then those opportunities are maybe not as much. Look, I enjoy that. I'm thrilled to be here, right, to talk to students. I do this a lot. I talk to college students, because I enjoy doing it. But I don't get to go and teach a class, which I would if I was in academia. So I think for me, maybe research-wise, I won't worry about it too much, especially if you decide to go into a research-intensive industry. But the whole teaching component, I think, is maybe the one to me that is the biggest differentiator.
Okay, another question from the perspective of a college student. How can you get involved in the biotech sector, such as in the position you are in today?
Yeah, excellent question. the most effective thing that I've seen in my career is when you are in college, right? Perhaps maybe after your sophomore year, go do an internship in a biotech company. Every company has summer internships. They span the entire spectrum of the industry. There are some in research, some in process development. Where I am, there are some in manufacturing. There are some. They're all every dimension of the company has summer internships. And the best way is to go and spend 3 months and do it for 2 years, sophomore year, junior year. What that will do is you will get to live the life that folks like myself live, right? You'll be in the same buildings, in the same labs, in the same meetings also at times, right? So you will get to see what life is like. And you'll either love it, right? Or you'll say, hey, you know what? Maybe this is not for me. But 9 of 10 times, students will do that. Say, hey, you know what? I want to come and work full time. So I think there is no better way than getting immersed in that. And, I'll give you my email. If you are there 3-4 years from now, send me an email. I'd love for you to come and be an intern with us at Amgen, right? So very welcome. So do that. And then what happens is, one is you will confirm for yourself, this is what I want to do. And then you'll meet a lot of people. And believe me, right? I mean, when we see exceptional interns, we'll tell them, hey, once you're done, come work for us. It's because you'll have spent 3 months with us, you know our systems, you know our quirky computer systems, and you'll have figured all of that out. So you can come in and work and hit the ground running. So I would say internships is maybe the most effective way for you to experience and then also plan for a career if you choose to do that.
Okay, that was our last question. Oh, no, we've got one. Hi, this is from Alex again. Just to follow up to my previous question on CRAS, how will this drug be delivered as precision medicine?
Yeah, so KRAS is a pill. So in terms of administration to the patients, right, it'll be pills that the patients will take. So the administration piece is pretty simple, actually. If you contrast that with Aimovig, which I just told you, Aimovig is a protein. So proteins are normally given either IV or subcutaneously, like as an injection. So Aimovig is an injection that the patient has to take, but KRAS is pretty simple. And the reason it is precise, right, is it specifically targets that G12C mutation on the KRAS gene, which is prevalent when people have non-small cell lung cancer. So the specificity comes from the design of the drug to the target. That's the precision part, but the delivery part really is it's a convenient oral, we call it an oral solid dosage form. It is basically tablets.
Well, Dr. Goudar, thank you so much. Very enlightening and very inspirational. All right, we were such a pleasure to have you, and all the best. All right, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank you.